Hey, this is Max here, and in this tutorial I'll show you how you can truly synchronize ManyChat with ActiveCampaign. It's going to be extremely cool. It's also going to be a bit taggy, but I'll make sure to explain everything step by step, and everything I'm about to show you, you will also find copies of in the description box below. So let's just dive right in. So first of all, what are we going to create exactly? So we're basically going to create a two-way street between ManyChat and ActiveCampaign. And by doing that, from within ManyChat, we can add context to ActiveCampaign, but we can also add tags, remove tags, or even start automations from within ManyChat. So that's going to be really cool. And then it's also going to work the other way around. So we're going to send flows, update custom fields, add tags, remove tags from within ActiveCampaign. So we have our automation inside ActiveCampaign. Then we're going to trigger a webhook, and the moment that we do that, then we can start a flow in ManyChat. So I think this is really crazy cool. You can do so many cool things with this. So by doing this, you can really create a cool omni-channel marketing experience. So the possibilities of this. Now I already said a few, but for example, what you can do from inside ActiveCampaign, you can, when someone does not open an email for 23 hours, you can start a flow to send a message. What you can also do is, as soon as someone clicks a link inside an email, you can start a flow in ManyChat to send a message. What you can also do is that when someone replies to an email, then in your automation, you can trigger a webhook to start a flow and send a message. Now, what's also really cool is that if you're doing webinars, then after the webinar, you can dynamically check if someone attended the webinar or not. And then based on that, you can send a flow and send a message in Messenger. Or what's also possible is that when someone is purchasing a product, you can add a tag inside ManyChat. So I think this is all really cool, and it also works the other way around. So when someone gives an email address, you can add a contact to ActiveCampaign. And also when someone interacts with a specific message, imagine that they maybe click like a certain quick reply or they click a certain button, then you can start an automation in ActiveCampaign. Or you could also update custom fields to, for example, update segmentation data. And what's also going to be really cool, which will also show you how to do, is how you can update the messaging window and bot status custom fields inside ActiveCampaign. So in a bit, we're going to create some custom fields. And by doing that, later on in our automation, we can check, is this person still subscribed? And is this person still within the messaging window? Are we allowed to send a message? So then I want to dive into the implementation. It's going to be really taggy, and it's maybe also going to take rather long. So I will also make sure to put some timestamps for you in the description box below so that you can maybe easily navigate this tutorial. So first we're going to do some preparations. Then in the second part, I want to show you how you can synchronize ManyChat to ActiveCampaign, and then the other way around, how you can synchronize ActiveCampaign to ManyChat. So let's do the preparations first. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some fields in ActiveCampaign. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a field group called Facebook Messenger Bot. And inside that, we're going to create 3 custom fields. One with the ManyChat ID, one with the messaging window, and one with the bot status. So let's go over to ActiveCampaign. And then down here, you see that I already created them. So to make it like this, you add a new group. So you click this, and then you say Facebook Messenger Bot. Then you create this, and then you have to create these 3 custom fields. The ManyChat ID is a text input custom field. So you would type here ManyChat ID. Then you select your group, and the groups are just, by the way, to keep things like organized basically. And then you set this to text input. And then we create the bot status and the messaging window. So the bot status, then again, you would type here bot status. You select the Facebook Messenger Bot group. Then we have our field type, and it's important that you set this to drop down. And then we select this to subscribed and unsubscribed, and then we delete the third option. So then this field can only be set to either one of these options. And this is really handy because then you can also not really make any typos or something. So then you would also add that. And then we have our messaging window so that we know, okay, are we still eligible to send this person a message? So then you would say messaging window, Facebook Messenger bot group. You set it to the drop down, and it's important that you set this to inside and outside. So inside the messaging window, outside the messaging window. So that's basically that. After you've done that, we go back over to my little presentation, and then we have to create a bot field inside ManyChat. So we can create a bot field that's called key ActiveCampaign. So go over to ManyChat, go over to your settings, go over to custom fields. Then in the top, you find your user fields. That's not what we're going to create. We're going to the bottom, we're going to create our bot field. So you click here, new bot field, and you call it key-ActiveCampaign, and you leave it to text. Now then we have to set the value. So we want to store the ActiveCampaign API in this, because to make ManyChat talk to ActiveCampaign, we're going to use the ActiveCampaign API so that you do not need something like Zapier or Integromat. And that sounds really technical, but it's actually really easy, and I have lots of examples that I will show you in a bit. So go back to ActiveCampaign, you go down here to settings, and then you go to developer, and then you copy this, your key. So you copy this, and then you paste it in here, and then you create it. So I already have it, you see it down here, and we're going to use this later on inside our external requests. Now, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into part 2 of this tutorial basically, and it is how we're going to synchronize ManyChat to ActiveCampaign. So the first thing we're going to do is I want to show you how external requests work and how you can use that to, for example, add tags and start automations inside your flows. So these are all the things that we're going to cover. So let's go over to our flows, and then here I prepared something. It's called ActiveCampaign requests, and here are all the requests that we're going to need to send data over to ActiveCampaign. So I recommend you to import this and then store it somewhere, because then you can easily just like copy these and paste them in another flow so that you don't have to recreate them over and over again. So let me show you how they work. So this one, for example, is to update or create a new contact. This is the one that we're going to use most often. So let me explain how this works. So you set the request type to post, and then the request URL should be this, and then you have to exchange this part. So you see here, this is my username for ActiveCampaign basically, and you need this, what is in here. So you have your API access URL, it's called. So you copy then this and you replace that in all my examples. And then you have /admin/api.php and then a question mark. And then our API action is contact sync. So it's not super important that you know how this works. Just this is the most important part, that we're going to use the action contact sync. And then the content type you set to application/x www form URL and code. I have no clue what that means, but this way it works. And then in the body is the data that we're going to send over to ActiveCampaign. So it works like this. You always start with a curly bracket and then you end with a curly bracket. And then you always have your name of your variable and the value of your variable. So you always type it like this. So you start with, how are these called? Quotes. And then this API key, and then a colon, and then quotes again. And then in this case, we want to add our API key. So you go to your variables and then you look for key ActiveCampaign. You paste it in there, and then it's always important that you uncheck these boxes, because otherwise it's not going to work. And then you close off with another quote and then a comma. And then you see here that we already got some code. And then you leave this to API output JSON, and then you see that we add the email, and this is the email system field variable. Then the first name variable, last name variable, and then we have here this P, and then one between brackets, and then one again. And this is your list ID that you want to add people to. So my list is 1. So let me show you where you can find that. So when we go over to our lists, then you see here that I have 2 lists. One is called customers and one is called main list. And then all the way down there in the left bottom of the screen, you see this URL when I over it. And then you see there list ID 1 and list ID 2. So when I want to add someone to this list, then I have to add people to list 1. So then here you set 1. If you want to add people to list 2, you set here 2. And then here again, 2, right? But in this case, I want to add people to list 1. And then the status is, are they subscribed, unsubscribed, bounced? I always set this to 1, like we want to subscribe them to our list. So go here for 1, 1, and then we want to update a field. And this is how you update a field. You always have here a quote, field, bracket, and then your variable here of the custom field that you want to update. So I'm going to go over here to my fields. Then I can show you where you can find those. Manage fields. And then down here, you see how that's written, ManyChat ID. And this is what you need here. Percentage, ManyChat _ ID %. And then you put that in there. And then you always have comma, 0, bracket, and so on and so on. And then here you put in your user ID. But if you just import this flow that I will put in the description box below, then this will all be done automatically. You do not really have to worry about it. But then you just know how that works. And then here you see what that JSON looks like. So you see here, for example, that my ManyChat ID is there, and my first name, my last name, and my email address. And that's basically it. And all the other ones work pretty similar, but they have different actions. So you see here that we have the same URL again. This is also the same, post is the same, only this is different. API action is contact tag add. So we're going to add a tag to the contact. And that looks like this. So we have our API key again with our bot field. Then we have our API outputs, always JSON. Then we have email, then our email system field variable, and then the tag that you want to add. So here you see event, sign up, challenge, and then this tag will be added to this email address basically. Now then we have the remove tag API action. So it works pretty similar also, then only this is different, API action, contact tag remove, and then you also see in here that this is also similar. If you want to add someone to an automation, you use the API action automation contact add. Everything else is also the same, only this is different, that you have your API key, API output. This is the different with everything, or the same with everything, sorry. And then you have your contact email, and then automation, and then the automation that you want to start. So for example, if I want to start this automation, then you go to your URL and then you see that this is automation 62. So if you want to start this automation, you put 62 in here. So then I'll go back, then we store this, and remove from automation works the same. This looks the same. So okay, which contact do you want to remove from an automation, and then the automation ID that you want to remove someone from, your API key again. This is all the same again, only the API action is automation contact remove. And then if you want, you can also set more custom fields. We use that, the contact sync action. And then here you see API key, API output, email, and then field. And then, for example, I have a custom field that is called product. And if you want to add more fields, that's possible, you can do that. Then you would, for example, have this, you would change it, you would add some commas here, and no comma in the last one, because otherwise you're going to get an error, see? And then you would just change this and change the variables if you want. So that's basically how the external requests work to talk to ActiveCampaign. And then I want to show you some cool things to automate most of the things that we want to do. So for example, we want to create or update a contact when the email system field changes. So when you capture someone's email address in Messenger with ManyChat, then the system email field is changing, and then we're going to create a rule that triggers when that field is changing. So this is how you do that. You go over to automation, you go to rules, and then down here you see that I already created a bunch of rules, and this is the one that I was talking about, create, update, contact. Again, I will also put examples of this in the description box below so that you can just import all these and that you only have to change them to your own needs. It will save you probably a lot of time. And then you see here, when this happens, so when this is happening in a rule, then we perform this action. So here you see when this happens, so when the system field value changed, so email system field changed to any value, then we trigger an external request. And this external request is the same as the one that I just showed you. So here you would again replace your username of the one that you have in ActiveCampaign. And then the API action is contact sync. This is all again, all the same. And then we have our API key, API action, API output, and then email, first name, last name, and then the list you want to add someone to, the subscription status, and then the field. And this, by the way, you can delete. I say I did that wrong because it's already here in the URL. And then you see here that we add the user ID. So I call it the ManyChat ID to a custom field called ManyChat ID, because later on you will see that we're going to use that to talk from ActiveCampaign to ManyChat basically. So then we click save here, and then we would preview this to see if it is working. Test the request, and then we go over to my contacts. Let's go here, contacts. And then you see here that Pizza Dough was just created a minute ago. So here you see my first name, my last name. And if you go down here, you see that the ManyChat ID was already added to the Facebook Messenger bot group of fields. And then we're going to the next one. So then I want to show you how you can update the bot status, because in ActiveCampaign, we want to know if someone is still subscribed to the bot or if that person may be unsubscribed. And in that case, we cannot send a flow. So let me show you this one, bot status. So when this happens, this external request triggers, and you see here when the tag is applied, status subscribed, and the email system field has any value. So this is important because otherwise it's going to trigger for everyone, even if we do not have the email address, then this will be triggered. And also when the system field value changes, so when the email system field is changing to any value and the tag is status subscribed, then we also trigger an external request. So you see that I work with tags here. So it's important to make this work. You have to add tags to a contact when someone is subscribing to your bot. Then you give them the tag status subscribed. And when someone unsubscribes from your bot, you remove that tag and you add a tag that says status unsubscribed. Then it says this external request. So you see that this again is all the same, and our API action is contact sync. And then in the body, we have again our API key, API output, our email. This is almost always the same. And then field bot status, we update with subscribed. So then we test the request. We go over to ActiveCampaign. Then we refresh the contact. And then we see here what happens. If I scroll down, then you see now here that bot status says subscribed. So this one is also working. Click save, always make sure that you enable it. And also very important, I didn't mention it with the first one, you always set it to perform these actions any number of times, because otherwise it only happens once and we want to update it every time. So then we go back over to our rules, and then you see here, this is the bot status when someone unsubscribes. So when the tag applied status unsubscribed and users that match all of the following conditions, email system field has any value, or when I applied the tag that says status automatically unsubscribed and also the email system field has any value. So again, it's important that you apply those tags. So I'm, for example, also automatically unsubscribing people that don't engage for a while. Then they get this tag, and when they unsubscribe themselves basically, then they get this tag. And then here we have our external request. Again, the contact sync API action. Inside our body, we update the bot status with unsubscribed. So let me preview this. Then we go over here and then we see if it worked. And we scroll down and then you see now that it says unsubscribed. So by doing this, you always know in ActiveCampaign if a contact is subscribed to your bot or not. Then we click save. Then we want to check if we are allowed to send this person a message. So we want to update the messaging window custom field. And we do that 1 minute after the last interaction, so the last time that they interacted with your Facebook Messenger bot, and the email system field has any value. we trigger this external request, again, contact sync, and then in the body, we have our API key, API output, email, then we have our email system field variable, and then the field that we update is messaging window, the one that we created earlier, and we set it to inside. So then I will preview this. We go back over and then we see if it worked. And then you see here that it says messaging window inside. Now then we have one more. So then we go over here. So then outside is 24 hours after the last interaction. That is when someone is outside the messaging window. Some people also call it the 24-hour window. Then we also trigger this, the action contact sync. And then you see that we set the messaging window to outside. I will test this. Then we wait for a response from ActiveCampaign. Now you see here that we got a 200 OC. Then we go to ActiveCampaign, we refresh. Always just make sure that everything is working. So make sure to double test everything. And then we scroll down and then you see now that it says outside. So by setting up all these rules, you automatically keep all these custom fields updated in ActiveCampaign. And I think that's really great. And in a bit, I will show you what we are going to use all of that for. Now then, when we did all that, so we automatically add contacts to ActiveCampaign, we automatically update the messaging window with some rules based on when someone interacted with our bot for the last time. And if someone unsubscribes from our bot, we set that field to unsubscribed. And if someone is subscribed to the bot, then we set the bot status to subscribed. And then I want to show you how you can add external requests to your flows where needed. So for example, when you want to start an automation to deliver a download, like a lead magnet, or when you want to add a tag whenever you want or update a custom field. So for that, we go back over to our flows. We go back to my ActiveCampaign requests. So I always do this myself. I have this one flow that I always use. And then for example, when I want to add someone to an automation, then I would just copy this. So on Mac, it is Command C, and I think on Windows, it's probably Control C. And then you can just like paste it. And what's really handy, you can also do that in other flows. So you never have to recreate this whole thing. So you select it, I press Command C, I will save this. Then I go to my flows. And then imagine that I have like a lead magnet. I believe I have an example of that. Here, tutorial, how to collect emails, smart email capture. So in this flow, I ask for someone's email address to receive a checklist. And then afterwards, I want to add people to my email service provider. So to do that, I just remove this block. I drag this one in there. And then it says, check your inbox in about 5 minutes. So then I update this. Then again, you check if your username here is correct. And then you say which automation you want to start. So I want to deliver my checklist. So I would go over to my automations. And then you see here that I have an automation that's called download delivery chatbot checklist. And then I want to know the automation ID of that automation. And in the URL in the bottom left, you see here when I hover it, it says 59. So this automation 59 that we want to start. So you can always do it like that. And then if you want, you can also copy all the other examples. You can, for example, when you want to add a tag to a subscriber, then you just go over here to your flow with all your examples. And then here, add tag. Then you copy it, you paste it once to see if it works, because sometimes it's a bit tricky. Publish this again. Then you go back over to your flow. So imagine we have this flow here, it's just empty flow. And then when someone performs a certain action, we want to add a tag to that profile. Maybe when they start a challenge, or when they start a giveaway, or when they answered a certain question, and you want to store that into ActiveCampaign. Like, you can really use this for lots of things. So then we have our API action, which is contact tag add. And then inside our body, we say, okay, this is the API key. This is the API output. This is the email address of this person. And this is the tag that we want to add. So you say here, event, sign up, challenge. And if you want, you can also add multiple tags. You just have here a comma, and then you type your second one, event, blah, blah, blah. And then both tags will be added to ActiveCampaign. So this is really handy. So make sure that you have a flow with all your external requests. Then you can also never really make mistakes with this. Now, then we're basically going to dive into the next part of this tutorial, and that's about how you can basically synchronize ActiveCampaign to ManyChat. And we're going to do that by using all the things that we have just created. So let me show you what we're going to use. So to do this, we're going to create a scenario in Integromat, and Integromat is a really cool tool, which I will show you in a bit. It's very similar to Zapier, maybe you know that. They call themselves the glue of the internet. You can connect multiple tools with it without any program knowledge. So I'm not a programmer, so for me this tool is really great. And I think this tool is way better than Zapier because it's cheaper and it's more advanced. And I think it's like also easier to use. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to create a scenario to basically create a bridge. Now, this is what that scenario looks like. So this is Integromat. And in Integromat, you have scenarios, and scenarios are basically your automations. And inside the scenario, you have modules. So you see here that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different modules. My first module is a webhook. So this is where we are going to send data to from inside ActiveCampaign. Then we have a router, which is basically splitting the path. And then we check what kind of action we want to perform. So do we want to send a flow? Do we want to add a tag? Do we want to remove a tag? Or do we want to update a field? And this is really handy because this way we only need this scenario to perform all these things. So this is how it works. So we have our custom webhook. So when you do this for the first time, then you create a new webhook, you give it a name, and then you get a URL like this. And this URL we're going to add to our automation later on. So let me show you that in a bit. Then we have our router, and then we split and check which action we want to do. So these are actually filters. You see this like little funnel, this little filter here. So here you see, for example, that we check if the action that we set in the webhook, which I will show you in a bit how that works, is equal to send flow. Then if yes, we send a flow with ManyChat by using this page, then the subscriber ID of the contact in ActiveCampaign. And this is really cool. Like this is where you see that we added the ManyChat ID to ActiveCampaign, because then we can do stuff like this. And then we have our flow ID. So let me first show you where to place your webhook. So you copy your webhook, then we go over to an automation. Let me show you an example. So here, for example, we have webhook sync test. So this is, I always create like a new automation to quickly test if everything is working. And then you would basically paste it in here. And then ActiveCampaign is going to send all the data of that contact to that webhook. So basically to start that scenario. But we want to do a few things with this webhook. We want to add the action to it. We want to add the ID of the flow tag or field, and then maybe even the value of the field. And it's getting a bit complicated now, but I'll really try to explain it step by step. So I created this little document, right? So this is our webhook. And to this webhook, we want to add which action we want to perform. So to do this, you copy your webhook, you put it in a document, you type a question mark to basically start a query string, and then you type action is add tag. And then we have to say which tag we want to add. So then we go over to n ID is, and then you have to enter the ID of your tag. And I will show you in a bit where you can find that. Now, if you, for example, want to remove a tag, then you say action is remove tag. So these things we are going to use inside these filters. So the webhook data comes in and we added what kind of action we want to perform inside this scenario. So here you see action equals to send flow, right? So in our document, where is it? In our document, you see here action is add tag. And then we also add an ID. Which tag do we want to add? Because ManyChat is asking for an ID. So here, add tag. And then in here you see, okay, subscriber ID. Then you select here. This is the standard data that you get from ActiveCampaign. So you get, for example, the ID of the contact, their email address, first name, last name, and then all the custom fields of that contact. So here you see that this contact has quite a lot of data. And then down here, you will find your ManyChat ID. And if you see here, you also see your bot status and your messaging window that we created. So in here, you put your ManyChat ID because then ManyChat knows who to send this flow to or who to add this tag to. And then here you say either add tag or remove tag. So this is the add tag action that we wanted. And then you have here the ID. So this is the ID of the tag that we want to add. So tags are actually the most difficult. So that's why we started with that one. So to find a tag ID, you go over here to ManyChat ID, to ManyChat, sorry. And then you go over to Managed Tags. Then we wait till this is loading. Then you select your page. And then down here, you will find all the tags that you have inside your bot. So find the tag that you want to add to your contact. So for example, here, email newsletter is no. And then click here on map. And then you see that you get a number. And this is the tag ID. So I know this is really not a handy way, but unfortunately inside ManyChat, you cannot find tag IDs. You have to do it this way or an even more complicated way with the API. But then you would copy this and then you would paste that in here. And then you can just copy this whole URL and then you would paste it inside your automation in here. Then we click save. And then when someone is going through this automation, then that tag will be added to the right contact. And then you see what it looks like inside your automation. So again, to add a webhook, I'm not sure if I explained that, you go to conditions and workflow down here, webhook, and then you paste your webhook and you click save, and then it's added to your automation. Now, then what I want to show you is how you can, use automations to send flows basically. So I hope you got this. So just make a screenshot of it. So to add a tag, you have action is add tag. To remove a tag, we have action remove tag. To send a flow, we have action send flow. And to update a field, we have action update field, and then the ID of the field, and then the value, and then the value that you want to add to that field. So this may be also good to explain, to update a custom field, you also are going to need an ID. That's luckily a bit easier. You go to settings, you go to custom fields, and when you hover this on the left side, you see a 6-digit number. So just this is your the code that you want updated to. This number is a little bit longer. So you just type that over and then you put that inside your webhook so that ManyChat knows, okay, which custom field do we have to update? And then one more thing, we're going everywhere here. Then inside your flow, to get your flow ID, you have to go over to your flow that you want to send. And then this is the flow ID, this number. It always says content. And then I think it always starts with the year that you created the flow and then like a really long number with 1 underscore in it. So you always copy this and then you paste that inside your webhook. So here you, for example, see send flow, action is send flow, ID is, and then you see that content 2020, and then we have that whole number. So let me show you some automations. And then inside that automation, I will show you how you can check with an if else if the contact is subscribed to the bot and if they're still inside the messaging window. And then also, again, I will show you how to trigger a webhook inside the right place. So let's go back over to automations. And then you see here that I have 2 examples. So first I want to show you this example. So how we send a flow after someone opens an email. So for example, here we send an email that says awesome email. That's the title of our email. And then here we have a wait action. So we wait until has opened campaign awesome email for up to 1 day. So if someone opens this email, they will continue right away. If they do not open it within 1 day, then they will continue. And then after that, we have an if else. And inside this if else, we check if someone has opened our awesome email. If not, in this example, we just end the automation. If yes, then you see what we're going to do. We have another if else, and inside this if else, we check if our bot status, so the custom field that we created, is subscribed, and the messaging window is inside. Because if this is both the case, the person is subscribed and is inside the messaging window, then we can send a message. So then we trigger a webhook that does that, that triggers our scenario. So let me copy this and then I will just get my document again and paste it down here, and then you see how it works. So we have our webhook, right? Question mark, then the action that we want to perform inside our scenario, which is send flow, and the ID of that flow is content, and then this long number. So this is the flow that we want to send. So at the moment that this webhook triggers, this starts, then we check if we have a ManyChat ID, if the action exists, and if also the ID exists, just to make sure that the scenario doesn't break. And then it's going to follow this path, because the condition for this path is action. So this is the action that we added to the webhook URL, right? I hope you can still follow it. I know it's like a bit complicated, and is equal to send flow. So here action is equal to send flow. Now, if yes, then we send a flow with this module in ManyChat. So we add our subscriber ID, you go to fields, then here ManyChat ID, and then the flow ID, and then you also see here how they give that example, and then you add your ID of that, and then that flow will be sent. So I think that's a pretty cool trick. You can use this for lots of things. You can also use it the other way around. If someone is not opening your email for example, 23 hours, that you then follow up inside Messenger, which is, for example, cool if someone is requesting a download inside Messenger. You capture their email address and then they get sent that download and then they do not open it. And then if you want, 23 hours later, you can send a follow-up. Now, then I want to show you one more example of another cool automation, and it is especially cool if you're doing webinars. So most smart webinar softwares, they can automatically add a tag to your email service provider. So I'm, for example, using Demio, and inside Demio, they will automatically add tags to ActiveCampaign when someone attends the webinar or when someone does not attend the webinar. So these are our triggers for this automation. So this automation will start when either of these tags is added. And then we first have an if else to check, okay, does this contact has the tag webinar attended, then the name of the webinar? If not, then we check, okay, does this person then have the tag did not attend webinar, right? You see that here. If not, we just end the automation because then something went wrong. And if the person attended the webinar, we will remove that tag because that tag basically served its purpose. That was to start this automation. And then again, we have an if else to check, okay, is the bot status subscribed and is the messaging window inside? Then we are going to send a flow inside Messenger to that person that says something like, hey, thanks for attending. What did you think of my offer? If not, then it's important that you maybe send an email in which you say, hey, thanks for attending. Do you like my offer? And then you could just continue your campaign like you would usually do. Now, if they did not attend, now then we basically do the same. We remove our tag. We check if the bot status is subscribed and if the messaging window is inside. If yes, we trigger a webhook. Let me copy this so that you can also show what that looks like. And then you see it's pretty similar. Action send is send flow and the ID is content. So yeah, that's basically it. Then we're nearly coming to the end, or actually we are coming to the end. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I know it's like really complicated, but again, I will put all the examples that I just showed you in the description box below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give it a little thumbs up because that really helps me a lot. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more tutorials like this. The next tutorial is also going to be really cool. It is about the ManyChat pixel. So you can add a pixel to your website and then you can also trigger flows when someone is visiting a certain page or maybe even clicks a certain link or clicks a certain button. So that's also going to be really cool. You see the tutorial here on screen right now. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.